The Byzantine-Sassanid War at the start of the 7th century was the cataclysmic event that reshaped mankind. Sparked by the overthrow of Byzantine Emperor Maurice by Phocas, the Sassanid king Khosrow II launched a devastating invasion to avenge his slain ally. Persian armies overran Byzantine territories, capturing Syria, Palestine, Egypt, and much of Anatolia. Heraclius, who seized the throne in 610, faced a crumbling empire, but rallied a counteroffensive after 622. Using innovative tactics and alliances with the Gok Turks, he invaded Persia, culminating in the Battle of Nineveh and the restoration of pre-war borders by 628. Both empires were exhausted, their treasuries depleted, and defenses weakened. This exhaustion set the stage for the Muslim conquest. Emerging from Arabia under Muhammad and his successors, the Rashidun Caliphate exploited the power vacuum. After unifying the Arabian Peninsula by 632, the Muslims launched invasions into Byzantium and Persia. The Byzantines lost Syria and Palestine after defeats at Yarmouk in 636 and Jerusalem in 637, while Egypt fell by 642. The Sassanids fared worse. Their defeat at Al-Qadisha in 636 led to the fall of Ctesiphon, and by 651, the collapse of their empire. Although the rapid Muslim expansion established Islam as the dominant religion, Byzantium survived, entrenched in Anatolia and Constantinople. However, their days as a preeminent Mediterranean power were over. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel, join the Byzantine Guards, and subscribe to help me reach 70,000 subs by the end of July. If you'd like to go a step further, you can also support me on Patreon, where you'll get ad-free viewing, all the maps from the videos, sources, and other exclusive content. I also want to make sure to give a special shout out to Tyler Innit965, who's commented this idea on every single video I've posted for over the past year, so I hope you enjoy this one. Thanks so much. Now, back into the video. The battle-hardened Emperor Maurice, the last member of the Justinian dynasty, met a gruesome fate when Phocas, a roughneck Thracian officer, conducted a vicious coup, butchering the emperor and his sons at Chalcedon's harbor of Eutropios on November 27, 602. Here, history was forever changed as Theodosius, Maurice's eldest son, was killed alongside his brothers as Phocas left no survivors, ensuring no rival claimants subsisted. Empress Constantia and her daughters were packed off to a monastery, only to face execution a few years later as Phocas cemented his authority. As Theodosius never escaped Ctesiphon to drum up Persian support from the Sassanid Shah, Khosrow II, just as Maurice had done for Khosrow back in 591, the Persian had no reason to reignite war against Constantinople. Phocas's reign, spanning from 602 to 610, was a dark stain in Roman history. His bloodthirsty purges, wiping out Maurice's kin and any whiff of opposition, turned the Constantinopolitan nobles against him and left the provinces simmering with resentment. The empire's borders crumbled under his watch as the Avars and Slavs tore through the Balkans, looting cities and eyeing Thessalonica, while the Sassanids appeared to prepare for yet another war. By 608, the empire was a powder keg. Heraclius the Elder, the exarch of Africa, and his son, Heraclius, launched a revolt as their cousin Nicetas marched overland and Heraclius himself led the naval assault. On October 5th, 610, Heraclius stormed Constantinople, toppled Phocas, and had the usurper's head on a pike. The gilded statue of Phocas in the Roman Forum, a hollow boast of his fleeting power, came crashing down with them. Heraclius, crowned at 35, inherited a wreck of an empire. The treasury was bled dry, the Balkans were a war zone, and Egypt, the empire's grain basket, was split by a religious feud between Chalcedonian Orthodoxy and the Monophysite heretics. Knowing the Sassanids were the biggest threat, Heraclius moved fast to buy peace with Khosrow II. Just as historically reported by the 7th century Armenian historian Sebios, quote, "Now as soon as Heraclius ruled, he dispatched messengers with great treasures and edicts to the king Khosrow, requesting peace with great entreaties." Without Theodosius in Persia as a pretext for war, Khosrow took the deal. Hefty Roman tribute for ceasefire was agreed to in 611. The treaty also saw Byzantium cede Maurice's Armenian gains from 591. Importantly, the agreement renewed the Edict of Religious Toleration for Christians in Persia, helping cool tensions. This costly peace gave Heraclius time to rebuild, while Persia, flush with Roman gold, shored up its own defenses as both expected war with the other at some point in the near future. With breathing room secured, Heraclius turned inward, leaning on Maurice's exarchate system to stitch the empire back together. The Exarchate of Africa, one of his major power bases, became vital, pumping grain and coin to Constantinople. while the exarchate of Ravenna desperately tried to hold off the Lombard forays. Heraclius handpicked loyal exarchs, giving them free rein to tackle local threats. In Africa, they beat back Berber raids, securing the coast. In Italy, Ravenna's wall stood firm against Lombard assaults. This setup let Heraclius focus on the Balkans, where Avars and Slavs had run rampant under Phocas, fighting a campaign to retake Singundinum in 613. After retaking the city, the Byzantines continued on as the emperor's victories by 615 pushed the Slavs back across the Danube, where Roman garrisons and local Illyrian militias locked down the frontier, restoring order to a battered region. The Slavic plague was gone. Egypt demanded a heavier hand. Split by the Chalcedonian Monophysite clashes, the province was an absolute mess, as Phocas' policies had only served to exacerbate problems. Heraclius, hellbent on unity, launched a thorough campaign in 612 to crush Monophysitism and restore Chalcedonian control. Keep in mind, only a small percentage of the bishops were Monophysites, as Monophysitism was effectively a rural movement popularized by the monasteries. Local patriarchs and governors sued and sidelined Monophysite bishops and seized their monasteries. By 620, after 8 years of brutal purges, the Monophysite leadership was broken, though minuscule rural holdouts still remained. With the Christians reunified, he fortified Alexandria and Pelusium, repaired Nile irrigation channels, and co-opted the Egyptian elites to keep the grain flowing. All of this was within the newly formed Exarchate of Egypt, put under the leadership of his loyal cousin, Nikitas, ensuring the empire's economic survival. These actions from 611 to 621 pulled the empire back from the brink. The treasury slowly refilled with taxes as stability brought economic revival. The army, reshaped by the strategicons' disciplined tactics, trained now in Anatolian camps, as Heraclius ditched reliance on mercenaries in favor of Maurice's model with professional Roman legions taking place once more. Heraclius knew the Persian peace was a ticking clock. Khosrow was fortifying Armenia, biding his time. In Constantinople, Heraclius sold himself as Maurice's heir, commissioning a hagiography portraying the murdered emperor as a saintly martyr. While Byzantium underwent its difficult metamorphosis, the Persians strengthened their hand in Arabia. The Lakhmids, an Asturian Christian Arab kingdom centered in Al-Hira, were Persian vassals until their last king, Al-Nu'man III, was deposed around 602 after betraying Khosrow. Hellbent on a complete annexation, and bolstered by Roman crippling, the King of Kings led a campaign against the rebellious Lakhmids, crushing them at Dikar in 604. The victory, driven by Persian heavy cavalry and loyal Arab auxiliaries, ended Lakhmid autonomy. Khosrow installed the Persian governor in Al-Hira, integrating the region into the Sassanid satrapy system. This secured key trade routes and strengthened Persia's southern border against emerging Arab threats. The conquest enhanced Khosrow's reputation as the victorious, as other Arabs were now forced to reckon with the new Persian power on the peninsula. Muhammad's rise in Medina at the same time rattled Arabia. By 625, he had tamed the Hejaz, leading tribes together and raiding those who defied his new religion. His envoys reached Oman's Sassanid-aligned tribes in 628, tempting them to join his growing coalition. These talks were firmly rejected, though, as Khosrow projected power from Ctesiphon across the Arabian sands. The Oman tribes, cowed by his victories and the slaughter of the Lakhmid opposition, saw no hope in backing a desert prophet against the might of Persia. They spurned Muhammad, executing the prophet's envoys, sending messages of Medina's machinations alongside the envoys' heads to Khosrow. War was brewing. Furious, Muhammad struck back, igniting the Arab-Sassanid War. Khosrow, though in his 60s, was a lion in command. His army, full of Persia's infamous heavy cataphracts and Arab allies, overwhelmed Muhammad's tribal forces. Raging for 4 years, the war was a slaughter. At the Battle of Yamama in 629, Persian troops smashed a major Muslim army, scattering warriors and seizing chiefs, who quickly denounced Islam, swearing submission to Persia. The deserts of Najd saw more defeats, with Persia's disciplined logistics trouncing Arab hit-and-run tactics. By 633, remaining tribes, battered and disillusioned, began deserting Muhammad en masse, as his divine claims crumbled under the weight of repeated losses. Remaining tribes poured over to Khosrow, swearing submission to the great king. In the meantime, the Byzantine-allied Ghassanids swooped in from the west, conquering Medina in 634, carving a massive expansion for themselves. Muhammad and his followers managed to escape the city, facing off against the Persians in a desperate last stand at the Battle of Al-Rabadah. Sassanid cataphracts proved too much, as the Muslims were destroyed, snuffing out Islam, The fallout was seismic. By 635, Khosrow had secured most of Arabia for Persia, dominating trade routes of frankincense, myrrh, other spices, aromatics, perfumes, dates, slaves, and gold. All of this stuffed Ctesiphon's coffers full of Arabian spoils. His epithet, the Victorious, now became the Great, as comparisons with Cyrus and Darius cemented his name as one of the greatest Persians in history. The Sassanids, masters of ruling sprawling realms full of completely distinct cultures, wove Arabia into the satrapy system, installing loyal governors across their new lands, ensuring local obedience as Persian armies garrisoned the peninsula. Khosrow's court, a blend of Persian, Armenian, and Christian threads, absorbed Arab elites, trading loyalty for power, a tactic honed by the Persians and Parthians over the centuries. This kept rebellion in check and let Persia shift focus to its northern and eastern borders, fortifying against Gokturk raids and other nomadic threats, locking in its regional dominance as the Persianification of Arabia slowly took root. Religion in Persia slowly changed under Khosrow. Christianity, which had already begun to creep into elite circles, surged due to Khosrow's Christian wife, Shireen. Khosrow's tacit pro-Christian tilt, partly to appease his Christian subjects and keep peace with Rome, supercharged Nestorianism's spread, unlike Rome's Chalcedonian hammer. Shireen, an Nestorian herself, helped expand the Church of Seleucia Ctesiphon as Christianity grew across the empire. In 633, Khosrow had granted tax breaks and land to Mesopotamian monasteries, a move that enraged the Zoroastrian Magi, though by this point, Zoroastrianism had been in a steep decline for a while. The clergy, once Persia's spiritual backbone, watched their influence erode as Christian bishops rose in the imperial ranks, especially in Arabia, as missionaries won over the defeated tribes who were quick to renounce Islam. When Khosrow died in 637, the realm was stable and secure, ensuring a smooth transition to his chosen heir, the son of Shireen, Mardana-Shah. Raised in his mother's faith, he openly embraced Christianity, signaling an imminent change. Like Constantine had done in Rome, he saw Christianity as a glue to bind Persia's patchwork empire. In 638, he issued an edict granting Christians equal legal status with Zoroastrians, a move that alienated the Magi but won the hearts of Persia's growing Christian masses, especially in Armenia and Mesopotamia. Meanwhile, the Romans used peace with the Sassanids to redirect its energies westward, where the fractured polities of Italy and Spain offered opportunities for expansion. In Italy, the Lombards, Germanic invaders who had used Justinian's Pyrrhic victory to take the weakened peninsula, presented Heraclius with the golden opportunity. Under King Agilulf, the Lombards had consolidated their hold over much of northern and central Italy, capturing cities like Padua and Mantua from the Byzantine Exarchate of Ravenna. Agilulf's reign had been a period of relative stability. However, his death in 616 left the throne to his mentally insane 14-year-old son, Adoald, under the regency of his mother, Theodolinda. The Lombard nobility, predominantly Arian, clashed with the Catholic Italian populace, who looked to the Pope in Rome for spiritual guidance. This religious divide, coupled with the growing autonomy of powerful dukes in cities like Spoleto and Benevento, weakened the Lombard state, making it ripe for conquest. Heraclius pounced on Adoald's weak rule, striking a deal with the Merovingian king, Clothar II. The Franks had worked well with the Byzantines in the past, so they were natural allies. The Italian Wars began in 616 as Byzantine forces under the Exarch of Ravenna, Eleutherius, landed in southern Italy. Simultaneously, Frankish armies crossed the Alps and besieged Pavia. The Lombards were ill-prepared for a two-front war, as Adoald's erratic behavior alienated key dukes, causing many defections to the Byzantines or Franks. The Catholic populace welcomed Byzantine troops as liberators, particularly in Rome, where Pope Boniface IV, who had praised Phocas in 603, now aligned heavily with Heraclius. The Franks, meanwhile, crushed Lombard resistance in the north, capturing Milan in 620, forcing Theodolinda and Adoald to flee to Verona. By 622, Adoald's mental collapse led to his deposition by rebellious nobles, who briefly installed Aroald, Theodolinda's son-in-law, as king. Aroald's hostility to Catholicism, however, further alienated the Italian populace, and his reign collapsed when Byzantine forces seized Verona in 623. With its fall, the Lombard kingdom was totally dismantled. The Franks annexed the northern territories, integrating them into Austrasia as a new duchy. The rest of Italy fell to Byzantium as the Exarchate of Ravenna expanded to encompass Rome, Perugia as the new Exarchate of Italia, which was fortified with garrisons to ensure Roman dominance. Importantly, a land connection with Ravenna was re-established to the east. The Catholic Church likewise flourished as their Arian oppressors were gone. Importantly, the campaign strengthened the Frankish-Byzantine alliance, with the Frankish court henceforth maintaining close ties with Constantinople. While Italy burned, Heraclius eyed Spain, where the Visigothic kingdom was crumbling in on itself. King Sisebut had attempted to conquer the Byzantine outposts of Cartagena and Malaga, while Heraclius had been preoccupied with the Slavs. But these invasions had failed. His death in 621 left his young son, Recared II, on a shaky throne, challenged by nobles who hated dynastic rule, proud of their elected monarchical tradition. Suintila, a general under Sisebut, seized power in 621, orchestrating the murder of Recared, but the plot failed as Recared fled to the Byzantine enclave in southern Spain. From there, he sailed to Constantinople, winning favor from Heraclius as he was raised in the court. Suintila's reign quickly alienated factions within the Visigothic clergy and nobility, who resented his own attempts to establish a hereditary monarchy, so he tried to win them over by conquering the Byzantine territories left in Spain. His campaign, launched in 625, started the Visigothic War, but instead it exposed his weakness as the initial sieges failed. Heraclius, fresh off the Italian victory by this point, sent a fleet to bolster his stronghold in Cartagena with the Recared. He hoped the teenager would become a rallying point for the Visigothic enemies of Suintila, offering the boy to restore him to his throne, with Roman oversight, of course. Saint Isidore, the bishop of Hispalis, the most powerful cleric in Spain, who had been in the inner circle of Sisebut, backed the Recared, seeing stability in Byzantine protection. This, in turn, caused a massive shift as Byzantine forces were soon joined by defecting Visigothic nobles and clergy, steamrolling Suintila's army. By 627, Toletum, the Visigoth capital, fell to the Byzantines, and Suintila was executed. Recared was soon crowned by Isidore as the king of the Visigoths, as coins were minted in the Byzantine style, as new officials from Constantinople began to play a large role in the kingdom, advising the young king. This cemented Spain back into the Byzantine world, securing grain and trade across the Mediterranean. In 641, the Byzantine Empire, stretching from Spain to Arabia, had reasserted itself in a new golden age, forged through military triumphs and administrative reforms. The emperor was celebrated in Constantinople as the Restitutor Orbis, restorer of the world, his court blending Greek and Latin traditions. His son, Heraclius Constantine, inherited the revitalized empire upon his father's passing. However, the specter of Persia loomed large. Under Mardan Shah, the Sassanid Empire, enriched by Arabian conquests, had grown into a formidable power. Its embrace of Nestorian Christianity contrasted sharply with Byzantium's Chalcedonian orthodoxy, setting the stage for yet another 1,000 years of warfare between Persia and the Greek world. Comment below who you think would end up victorious in these new Roman-Persian wars. If you enjoyed this video on Byzantium, click here to watch what could have happened if Serbia had saved Byzantium in the Middle Ages. If you appreciate my work, please like, subscribe, and consider supporting me on Patreon to get ad-free viewing, apps, and more. Thanks for sticking around to the end. I'll see you soon.